Hello, my name is Dr. Venetia Brown. I'm an Associate Professor and Director of Programmes in Nursing. I am a mother to two fabulous young women of whom I couldn't be prouder. I love my job, which combines teaching with leading a team of healthcare academics. We develop, design and deliver programmes of study for qualified nurses and midwives who wish to engage in continuing professional development. In this video, I'll be talking about the various stages of my life and how it's been influenced by being a person of colour working in healthcare and higher education. In preparing for this video, I have necessarily reflected on my personal and professional journey, and as a result have gained insights which may be worth sharing. I've called these Dawnings and Realisations about my lived experience of being a woman of colour in the UK. I must emphasise that I only speak for myself and I still have much to learn. This video is about the importance of mentoring, not giving up and staying ambitious, not letting anyone tell you or imply that you are not good enough. Well, they can tell you or imply all they like, but you don't have to internalise it. Being visible, being heard and valuing yourself and who you are. Advocating for those less visible, audible than you, and stepping up. Okay, so my parents weren't quite Windrush, but they came over in the late 50s. Had the experience that I'm sure many people are familiar with trying to find housing, trying to find jobs, and moved to Croydon when I was 1. I went to a primary school, a local primary school, where I was the only child of colour there. And in the lead up to going to school, I remember being in Croydon and people literally thinking that it was okay to come and touch my hair to see what it felt like, and having to just be quiet and just put up with that. So that was quite interesting. When I went to school, I think the teachers were shocked about the fact that I could already read, that I could write, and so I spent quite a lot of my time reading on stage in assemblies, which I liked because I was good at it, but I think thinking back on it now and I think about what that was about, there was a certain naivety in me which made me think that it was just about me being good at reading, but I can see now that there were kind of I was on show actually, I think. So I did very well at school. I do remember my father having a set to with one of my teachers, because I think I must have been in the juniors, and I spent a lot of time on the sports field because I was good at sport as well. And my dad saying to me and then saying to the teacher, she needs to be in class. So that was interesting. And again, it was that kind of thing about I want you to be, I want to show how good you are and to get awards for the school, but at the expense of my education. So, and I must say about my lovely dad, that again, I'm sure it's not an unusual thing for people of colour to hear, but I was schooled in the, when they get A, you get A+. And that's always been the way that it has been for me, I think. And I had two really, really great teachers at my primary school. And I think I was saying, as I was thinking about my life and my professional experiences and personal experiences of education, I think I realise now that actually it was the importance of mentoring. My two teachers, who I think of very fondly, actually, and again, do you know, this is the thing about being a woman of colour. You never quite know. But actually, just take it. You get on. If they're going to help and support you, that's absolutely fine. It's only latterly I've been thinking about wondering about the motivation behind that. So I was lucky enough I wasn't lucky enough. I was good enough to pass my 11+, and I went to a convent, a Catholic convent, all-girls Catholic convent, which was actually a private school, but I got a direct grant, so I got a scholarship. So that was a whole new experience. And again, it was interesting, and I enjoyed it. I was clever, I was bright, and I had the most fantastic mentor, who I will name, Miss Keenan, who's my history teacher. And she was just marvellous, and she believed in me. She's the only teacher that I knew believed in me, full stop. Do you know what I mean? No, it didn't feel as though there was any background or any, so that was just wonderful, and I'll always be very fond of her. And at the one old girls' reunion I went to, she and I made a beeline for each other, and I could hear a lot of tutting in the background because all the other girls wanted to speak to Miss Keenan, and I was the one that got to do it, because she was really interested in what I was doing. It's in the context of this conversation, again, it's worth saying that I was the only woman of colour, girl of colour, in the school. Did really well, and then went to Bristol University, which was amazing, an amazing achievement, I would say. And I find myself doing this a lot. I kind of describe some of the things that I've achieved as being out of the ordinary, and I really shouldn't do that. Good friends of mine have said, Venetia, you just did what you did because you were clever. There's nothing amazing about it. It's just that you were, so don't put yourself down. Don't think of yourself of that in the ordinary. Bristol was another kettle of fish altogether. I'm partly, and the irony of it now, many years later, of graduating in the Wills Memorial Building, walking past Colston Hall, walking past the Colston statue, and the gradual dawning in awareness that I was actually graduating in a university that had its history in slavery. And I actually didn't really know what to do about that or what to think about that. It was that real confusion about being proud of having graduated, but knowing what that was built on. And I think that concept has kind of slightly lived with me. And I know that the George Floyd thing was really significant for me. I mean, I have to say, and my husband says that I should be ashamed of myself, but every time I see Colston being rolled into the canal, I just find it, I want to cheer, and I'm not sorry at all about that. Anyway, so yeah, Bristol was good. I graduated. And then I graduated into a recession, retrained to be a nurse, and that was interesting as well. With me, of the standard year one photo, we're all in our uniform and our starched aprons and our stupid hats, and I'm stuck on the end. The lighting is terrible, and I just look like this kind of dark shadow, and that was kind of that summarises really what it's been. It feels like there's no concept of, we've got this black woman or young girl in the photo. How is she going to be visible? So it's that notion of visibility that I think was kind of symbolic in that photo. So Bristol, UCH, Chelsea Hospital for Women, and then ward sister in Women's Health. Staff nurse first, then ward sister, and then a joint appointment, teaching and running a ward, and then into healthcare education, nurse education, all the while studying. I never stopped studying. So, and that culminated in 2017, and me getting my doctorate, which I am really proud of. What was it like? It was standing out but being invisible. That's kind of what it felt like for me. I know I stood out. I know I was because I was bright and intelligent and such, and it was I had the feeling that it was somewhat of a surprise to anybody. And also I think I stood out because I've got the accent that I've got, but underpinning that was this current of contextual lived experience. Do you understand what I mean by that? So I'm getting on doing my own thing and doing okay, and frankly not having to fight that many battles. Do you know, myself, I really didn't have to fight that many battles. The one battle as an example, which combines my professional and personal life, I suppose, in terms of the lived experiences. When I was a student nurse, I was working on a care of the elderly ward, and one of the patients, who I desperately want to name, but I won't, called out and said, "Oi, Sooty, come and pick up my walking stick." And I went and I picked it up. I said, "Please don't speak to me like that." And he didn't really give a monkeys about that. And so I then went to tell the ward sister, and she said, "Oh, but he's old." That's the way they thought in those days. So that was one of the times I thought, nobody's got my back. You know, that kind of feeling of disappointment and now you see things all over the health service, don't you? You know, and it was like, if I didn't, it was awful. I hated it. I was so upset and angry, but it made me think that there were people in, you know, of colour whose experience was experiencing that on a day-to-day basis. So that's part of it. The other part of it is about people's expectations and stereotypes that they hold. And one of the things that I regularly do if I'm going, say, shopping or whatever, because I know that people have a negative view of me, and because every time I walk into a store, particularly kind of chemists and stuff where there's lots of small, you know, makeup and such, the security guard follows me every time. So if I'm looking at a lipstick or a mascara or something small, I make sure that it's visible, so that I cannot be accused of shoplifting. If you go to, you know, Sainsbury's, you know, those self-checkout tills, when they say, "Do you want the receipt?" I always say yes, because I fully expect to be stopped and asked. So there's that. But it doesn't happen every day. It's not. I don't want this to sound like it's a poor me story, but that is the lived experience of my lived experience of how I get on with my life, but live with this, you know, this understanding of the way in which people see people of colour. It may be different for men and women as well. I think it probably is. I still have experiences, largely now in places that I don't expect, which is sometimes the workplace, where, you know, you are the subject of microaggressions that people don't even realise. They don't even realise. So, and that is difficult. So I might shut my mouth off about stepping up, but actually sometimes I still don't. Because you have to weigh up. You have to weigh up what the consequence of that's going to be for you. The look on people's faces, whether I'm going to be heard, whether people think, "Here she goes again, she's got a bee in her bonnet." You know, I've lived for many years with that concept of chip on the shoulder. And yeah, it's that "here she goes again" thing. I do recall, again, the George Floyd situation, where after you know, getting over being so upset about it, I thought, what can I do now? So I wrote to the Vice Chancellor of my university and just said, what are we going to do? We have to step up. And I felt so strongly about it, and I wasn't going to take no for an answer. And also, again, I just think it's really important that we don't keep quiet. We haven't had a voice, and it's time for us to have a voice. Not in an aggressive, just being consulted, being heard, and being listened to, and that being taken account of. And it's that thing I've talked about in terms of the lived experience. So, so when people have a view and an opinion, I think it needs to be through the right lens. it's got to be through the right lens. And I kind of understand, I didn't for a long while, but I understand now that concept of white privilege, which is about the privilege of not having to worry when your boy goes out to play, or not having to worry when your 14-year-old goes out with his mates and whether they're going to come back. You know, not having to worry about whether you're going to be accused of shoplifting or not having to worry about being stopped. Many members of my family who drive very nice cars because they are allowed to, have been stopped by the police many times, and that is and that's what there's a privilege to not having to think about that, and that's one of the I suppose the learnings, the realities that has struck home for me. And sometimes actually because actually I love my dad dearly, but you know, the pressure of A+ was a bit much. I don't think I could put it into words. I almost didn't feel as though I had the right to be devastated, but that's how I felt. But there was also, sadly, a sort of lack of surprise, because it didn't feel as though it was an unusual occurrence in the States. I was affected by it for a very long time, and I remember, I think it was last year when the police officer, they came into the courtroom to hear the verdict, and I had everything crossed that I could, and it would not have surprised me if he was not guilty. It wouldn't, it would have caused literally a riot. Do you know what I mean? It would have been, I can't imagine what would have gone down if he hadn't been found guilty. But there was a bit of me that wouldn't have been surprised if he had been. That was, and so it's that kind of cynicism and lack of expectation or around fairness and justice. That's a thing for me. I'm never surprised when I hear about an injustice, because I think that's life. That's the way that it is for people of a different colour, and I know that there are injustices for other groups of people as well. But this is my story. I went to a BLM event in Alexandra Palace, and what was, I don't know, it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have made me feel the way that I did, but I was so relieved to see people of every colour there. That made me feel quite a lot better. And it's still, even now, you can tell, even now it makes me feel really sad. Really sad. It was a realisation. I thought things had moved on. I didn't think people could be, that our lives didn't matter. And I cannot put it into words. I find it really painful to think about that man's life was so meaningless that it could be just snuffed out, and he didn't care. And he's not the only one. That's the thing. So yeah. And I didn't realise I didn't realise I was going to do that, but it's just, and that for me was a realisation. That was the time, and I said, I am not keeping quiet about this anymore. If I have an opportunity to make a difference, then I will. So at work, it's about making sure that in our curriculum there are people that look like me, people that look like the students that are on our course. So it's the student experience for me. It's the experience of working in the place that I do, and thinking about opportunities, looking much more carefully about who gets promoted and who doesn't, who gets the opportunity to go on a course and who doesn't, and asking, not being afraid now to ask questions about how did you get that? How did you, What about equal opportunities? Why weren't other people given a... So it's, equal access, and challenging. But I do still find it, I sometimes do get a bit scared about challenging, because I don't want to be seen as a troublemaker. And I'm not a troublemaker, but I'm just asking people just to look a little bit more carefully about their habits and actions and the potential for unconscious bias. Because actually what quite often happens is you promote in your own likeness, don't you? So you've got people that look like you, and anybody that's different, they come with they look at them through a different lens, and they look at them like I think they look at me and are quite surprised. Do you know what I mean? So people are surprised when I say I've got a doctorate. They're very low expectations. In school, obviously, just by getting the grades and qualifications that I did. I had mentors at work as well, although I didn't realise they were at the time, but they were key people who would say things like, why not go for the job? Why not? What's stopping you? What have you got to lose? And one of them, my mentors, actually, she moved on, and we used to work in the same place. She was more senior to me, very much more senior to me. She went and moved to another organisation, and then the first time ever I got headhunted, which is the first and last time, I have to say. But it was what they did, and what I have in my head with them now is, why not? Take a risk. I'm really, really risk averse, but from time to time it's like, take a risk. What's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? And I have to just say, I'm a school governor for a primary school, and I'm the diversity, the EDI lead governor. And sometimes I don't work with the children at all, obviously, because our job is to kind of hold the school to account, really. But in the EDI work that we do, one of the things that I would dearly, dearly love to do is to work with the children a little bit, or to talk to them, and to when they say, well, I can't do X, or I'm just say, why not? Give it a go. What have you got to lose? And don't fulfill people's stereotypes. Do your best to step out of them. Do your best to show them that actually, A, that you're an individual, that you're not going to conform, and B, that you have a right to achieve, and you have a right to expect support from those teachers to help you to achieve. So one of the great things we're doing, we're looking at the library and making sure that we've got a range of authors with a range of different backgrounds. We've got we had a wonderful poetry session where the kids were reading out this great poetry, Benjamin Zephaniah and all sorts of stuff, and Mallory Blackman. Actually, I had to do that myself. That was interesting in lockdown. But yeah, so for me, one of the things about mentoring was actually starting early, because sometimes if you can, it's much harder once it's internalized and almost solidified. So you just have to give people, young children, make them feel good about themselves right from the word go. That's what I'm going to do with my grandson. What I wouldn't want to hear is, we treat you all the same. That's the thing that really irritates me. Somebody well-meaning many years ago said, well, I don't see the colour of your skin. And I said, well, you need to, actually. And I think that's important. You don't, it's almost insulting. See the colour of my skin, see what it's like to be a woman of colour in this, and still be my mate, but just see that lived experience. I think it's really difficult. It's really difficult. I think for me in my work, what I would be doing, in the nature of the work that I do, I'd be doing things like monitoring, looking at the demographics of the population, thinking about people who are perhaps not as well represented, giving them opportunities to develop. So for me, I think there's multi-pronged. There's multi ways in which you can raise that raise the profile of TV, media, listening to people like Lenny Henry, who says, it's all very well, having actors and dancers and singers and people, but actually what you need is people behind the camera. You need playwrights, you need lighting editors, you need representation in every area of life. Do you know what I mean? Instead of just stereotyping people into health service or actor, if you're lucky. And then the other thing, of course, is making sure that those actors are not just stereotypical in the way that they're cast as well. So I think it's about profile raising. I think there has to be some sort of reflection around bias and unconscious bias. It's about storytelling as well, but it's just about not being invisible and being heard. That's my I cannot stand it, being invisible and being inaudible. I hate it in my personal life, at work, and in I just find it it's demoralizing. I think it was there are many, many times when that happened. I think when I was thinking about this, preparing for today, and I was just thinking about people who were meaningful to me in that journey, it was a realization that the teachers that I'd mentioned, just because I liked them and they were nice and they was clearly significant in my life, actually that was the beginning of what I now think of as the importance of mentoring. I don't think that's how they saw it, but for me so that was a dawning and a realization for me. The other dawning and realization was around George Floyd, and that actually it dawned on me in a nice way, good way, that actually it's not just people of colour who felt that this was a terrible tragedy, and it dawned on me, I had to stop myself feeling grateful and just say, this is how it should. Of course you should be angry about that. So that was it. That was it. That experience, that situation, made me think about so many things, so many dawnings, so many realizations. And actually it was a realization that for me personally, it was time to, I keep saying step up as if I'm out on the, marching and stuff. I don't mean that at all, but just in ways that I sit well with me, that I can not even necessarily make a difference, but at least, make myself heard. So it made me realise that whilst I'm a scaredy cat in quite a lot of my life, I'm not going to be in relation to that. And I keep saying to myself, I don't care, I'm going to do this. And I can hear my husband on my shoulder going, yeah, you are, you do care, you do. And I said, I'm going to do it. And I do, and the world doesn't fall apart. Sometimes people ignore me, and sometimes they say, I'd never thought of it like that before. And that's really important, actually. I've never thought of it like that before. I would say that think about what you think what you might lose. I think it's really important. Think about your situation and think about where you are. Think about who you're stepping up to, and when you've thought about it, do it anyway. Just do what feels right, and actually, you don't have to do it. That's the other thing. I think the other thing is that you do not have to do this all the time, and there is a temptation, I think, when we're even in a situation where we are exploring, say, the experiences of students, or we're some sort of project, and the temptation for the project lead to say, oh, Venetia, you can do that. I'm saying, actually, no, I'm not doing that. Because it's like only black people are the people that can, run this project or do this EDI stuff, it's like you have to carry the torch and responsibility for it all. And I'm not, whether it fails or whether it succeeds, and we don't have to be the torch bearers. And so you just need to be quite careful about the things that you step up to and think about your role in that and what is expected of you and what people think. What's your role in that, and be really, really clear about that. And actually, don't be afraid to say no, because I don't like the direction this project's going in, or actually it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. And even if you're in it and you're leading it, you can always step down. I think, in its simplest terms, I think it's people who are not like me, who don't necessarily have the same lived experience, but want to be supportive and actively supportive, and allies who are also people who step up. I think, and I might be making this up, or it might be wrong, but I think I see more names of people, different, in the media, and certainly in the papers that I read. I notice more journalists, and I think in the like on TV as well, it feels like something, I won't say switched, and I think there are definitely areas and sectors in society where that actually isn't happening. But it just does feel as though that there is an awareness that has made particular organisations think a little bit more about their policies and practices. I think it's scratching the surface, however. It means that it's somehow embedded and systemic, and that systems and policies and structures are such that it is almost inevitable that people of colour or people with a disability or whatever the minority is, but in the context of racism, it's about structures, policies and procedures that are embedded in an organisation which prevents people from progressing, in my view. And it's different from the individual racism, which is when somebody calls you sooty, or when somebody, do you know what I mean? Or the, and that exists as well. And the two things can exist side by side. I'd say to my girls that life is shades of grey rather than black and white. And I've also learned that the more I think I know, the less I realise I do. I've learned that people have different views about this whole EDI thing and different ways of managing it as well. From quietly active at one end to being vocally, physically active at the other. The other thing I learned about this, the use of language. So as far as everybody's concerned, there were Toxteth riots, Brixton riots, Tottenham riots. Other people call them uprisings. And the power of journalism, the power of those words defines the way that people think about those situations. People were cross and angry at the death of Mark Duggan. And the press reported it as a kind of riot. And I understand why, but again, through the lived experience, you could actually say that it was a protest. It could have been a violent protest, which in my view it was. But it's engendering a fear and an image of this powder keg of people ready to explode. And in my view, they had every, I mean, I wouldn't have gone about it that way myself, but you know, I mean, they had every right to protest. And the other thing about that, you know, there was a focus on the looting and the, you know, all that stuff that was going on as well. And they lost the message. They lost the message. That was the thing about it. And that's the issue about reporting. So I learned quite a lot about looking at the way, not taking for granted the words that people use, and really thinking about and looking at what you read and seeing what it's trying to say. I think reading critically is a really important thing to do, and listening critically to the way in which people express themselves, and actually not being afraid to say, I think it was a violent uprising, not a riot. So those are some of the things I've learned. There's loads more, I'm sure. I would say, don't let anybody tell you you're not good enough. I would say, be ambitious. I would say it's important to step up for what you believe in, but think about how you do that and the most effective way that can happen. And for me, it's about just value yourself. I think I said at the beginning, it's about valuing yourself, not internalizing that negativity and not letting it solidify in you so it impacts on the way in which you then go about the rest of your life. And don't give up. So here are 3 reflective questions that you might want to think about after hearing my story. So the first one is, how do you facilitate or encourage an understanding of the lived experience of people of colour? My second question would be, how did you feel about the George Floyd moment, and did it change you in any way? And finally, what does Black Lives Matter mean to you?
Thank you for watching this Meaningful Conversations episode. We hope you enjoyed it. If you would like to see more videos in this series, then please like and subscribe to this channel and hit the bell so you can get notified of new videos as they're posted. We look forward to seeing you in the next one.